And while we get started, I wanted to welcome everybody to the room. I am Scott Benton. I will be moderating this session today. If you guys have questions that you would like to ask either Adam or Katherine, you can certainly raise your hand or type them in the chat. And as we go through, at the end of the presentation, we'll have opportunity to have open-ended dialogue with both Katherine and Adam. But with that, we have about 22 minutes in our session, so we'll toss it over to Adam so he can start his presentation.
Sure, thank you, Scott. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll introduce myself briefly and then hand it off to Katherine. My name is Adam Searcy. I'm the chief of the facilities department for the school district. So we cover not only the capital construction, the design, but also the maintenance and repair of all the schools in the district. Work very, very closely on a broad range of issues, including enrollment forecasting, off-site design and construction, but then of course, everything within our schools and how the facilities interact with the people that live and work within them. Hopefully everybody can see our screen, but Katherine added a pretty light cartoon here that sort of isn't that inaccurate, maybe.
Hello, everyone. I'm Katherine Loudon, and I coordinate school counseling and school social work for the Washoe County School District. And it was really important for us to put together the physical, social, and emotional safety components, because you heard Superintendent McNeil mention that safety is a primary responsibility in our schools, but these things go together. We must always balance the physical and psychological safety. And you can see from this graphic that there can be a need for a real balance, especially when we're talking about school climate, culture, and facilities. The way that they're designed and the way that we interact with students when there are buildings makes a big difference with the way that they feel and whether or not they're actually safe.
So starting sort of from the outside and moving in, I wanted to first talk about the school enrollment zones, and the facilities department works closely with our zoning advisory committee to evaluate and establish enrollment boundaries for our schools. This is really where we start to incorporate the concept of community and neighborhoods and thinking about how students are safe getting to and from school, and how that community wherein the school resides helps establish that culture of safety and inclusion across the entire population. But as I mentioned, safe routes to school, a program through school police that the commission is very familiar with, really also works very closely with the entire school community to enhance some of those aspects outside of the facility itself. As you approach that facility, you're going to see measures such as what's depicted here with the exterior door numbering. This is new for emergency responders to quickly identify which door would be most effective or efficient for them to enter the building where an incident may have occurred. Things like single points of entry and secure perimeters, also visible hard safety and security elements that have been incorporated into most all of our schools. Once you enter that front vestibule of that single point of entry, we've begun incorporating visitor management systems, things of that nature that just really further provide double checks and layers of security as you enter our school buildings. All of these, we often speak in terms of layers, but for those of you that aren't as familiar with this topic, I feel like that resonates with me, that none of these elements are infallible, but they all provide a reasonable barrier to help create a balance. And that's the other aspect of what we do, is balancing the need for the core function of the building with the desire to establish some very hard security elements. So moving into the building, I want to hear a little bit more about how Katherine and everybody in the building uses the space.
Thanks. Welcoming schools and environments begin first with relationships. And in Washoe County School District, one way that we address relationships is often referred to as SEL, or social and emotional learning. Social emotional learning is a lifelong process where we look at both adults and students and the way that they gain skills and knowledge and dispositions. So an example of the components that how this would appear in schools is through self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and decision-making. So your child might be taught things in school like how to engage in relationship skills for building friendships, conflict resolution, perhaps perspective taking or empathy. They would be learning self-regulation. It's the way that we in Washoe County School District come together to communicate intra-communication and inter-communication. So that's the way that the principals are communicating inside their buildings with their staff and with you as parents, and then also how we as a district are communicating. We have a family engagement department and family engagement positions in schools, and these positions and this department puts out a lot of information about resources and connecting to families. So we have the outside building, and then we have people inside our building that are available to help build those relationships, as well as curriculum and instructional strategies and techniques. Every single one of our Washoe County schools has a mental health team available in schools. This consists of a minimum of a licensed school counselor and access to school psychologists and nurses. We also now have licensed mental health school social workers in a lot of our schools and safe school professionals. By having these uniquely trained mental health professionals available to students in schools, uniquely trained in their own disciplines, but also specifically for schools, this enables these integrative teams to provide services and supports to students and be ready and capable, widening their range. If you're a Washoe County School District employee and you're watching this, we recently put on, in anticipation for the oncoming year and also looking at this year, a major trauma conference across multiple departments. And you'll be getting more information about that trauma conference for building capacity within our Washoe County School District staff.
Thanks, Catherine. I kind of wanted to share on this slide as well, a couple of these spaces within these large, this is the cafeteria in our newest elementary school, and this is the front entrance in our newest middle schools. These are kind of community spaces as well, and different schools use them for different purposes and at different times, whether it's a parent organization or a community group that's using our school facility or other things. These are other aspects of the facility that we try to incorporate into our design as not only for use during the school day, but really as a community resource. So just moving forward, talking a little bit more interior to the school environment. We selected a couple of different examples here to try and depict the value of the visibility throughout the spaces, the openness that facilitates that, the daylight, the exterior daylight, which creates a real mood, an uplifting mood throughout the space that it brightens. You can see actually in this image, if you can see my cursor, these circular lights, pendant lights, but these are actually skylights, bringing natural daylight down into the center of the building. So little design elements like that that are very intentional to try to enhance the environment in these spaces. This visibility and daylighting also further enhances the sense of community, reduces the opportunity for isolation amongst the students throughout the building, and really helps share that sense of responsibility that we're sort of supervising all of the space, but we're also looking out for one another throughout all of these spaces. So that's also then balanced with the need for breakout spaces or private spaces. There's lots of offices, small group rooms, some have windows, some do not. And then of course, there are our restrooms, which have been much debated over the last several years, but now have been successfully implemented in some half a dozen new schools across our district. And I feel like this is actually a very good example of the balance between the needs that we're talking about here and having been implemented now at a handful of elementary and middle schools. So it's a pretty great example. Anything to add on this one, Katherine? We'll tab forward, talk a little bit more about how we bring those spaces to life.
So you can kind of see from this that supervision is a best practice safety strategy. And our buildings are designed, both our existing buildings and our buildings now, as well as the way that we prioritize our staff based on the ability to provide supervision. So Adam mentioned earlier a lot of things about the bathrooms, but now that our new schools have opened and people have seen the increased availability of supervision, we've seen a real change in how people view that. Also, I wanted to mention in safe and orderly schools on this slide, and then I'll turn it back over to Adam to talk a little bit about it, that when we look at safe schools, we also talk about equity and access. And our district has a big equity focus and inclusion focus on transforming our school district in a systemically sustainable way for fair and equitable access. And this involves looking at things like culturally responsive practices, having professional learning for staff, and collaboration. There's an equity task force within our district that works diligently, and it's these characteristic relationships that we have which are foundational for creating a safe, healthy, welcoming, and inclusive community.
Okay, so this is one of our last slides, just sort of a few more bullet points about aspects of our school facilities that are relevant to the overall environment. Even the singling out the facility maintenance, with increased funding for our school district towards maintaining our schools, the buildings, just the look and the upkeep of them does have an impact on the mood and ultimately the performance and behavior of the people within those schools. So we're very conscious of the greater impact, not just physically making the equipment work, but making it look and feel good affects everybody within it. And that, I think, speaks to this graphic on how it really is an umbrella across a lot of different services and dimensions.
And then I'll just kind of go quickly through some of the rest of this. Washoe County School District coordinates with our local Washoe County and county incident command system, which is the Department of Homeland Security's way that we look at crisis management and emergency response. We have an emergency manager. We have a plan that we coordinate and work together with as a team. We as a district practice training and all of these different components that we've talked about and actually drill these things. We also have an online app at NV, Safe Voice NV. .org. Safe Voice is an online platform where students can report if they see something or hear something. We always encourage them to report to staff, but they also can report using the online app. And then as a district, we're moving toward incorporating more and more restorative practices. And it's a way at looking at student behavior that doesn't exclude students or punish students, but instead invites them in and has conversations with them. It provides clarity and consistency and gives them that inviting environment that can help restore community. And you can see in the graphic, we've put a lot of things that are related to school climate and safety. Our district engages in annual safety surveys for students, staff, and also parents and families. So you may have received that.
Right. Well, that's kind of the end of our content. We just wanted to really emphasize that comprehensive perspective that we take from your homes to entering the school to living and playing within the school, and how we try and work hand in hand with sometimes competing interests to blend it all physical, social, and emotional safety. These are our direct emails for Katherine and myself, and we'll turn it over maybe now for a little bit of Q&A. Thanks.
It looks like there's a question in the chat, Adam, that would be for you. It says TP retrofit. Does that mean no more of those horrible little stiff paper squares?
Absolutely. This is a topic I'm passionate about. There is no doubt that that is cruel and unusual. But in all seriousness, this is a hand hygiene issue. And we are rapidly moving towards retrofitting all of our toilet paper dispensers with modern rolled toilet paper. Awarded to the lowest bidder, of course. So don't expect luxury, but at least, you know, when you're given I've got little kids and they're not necessarily super, you know, good with the tools that they have to work with. So when you're working with the square toilet paper, they've kind of got their work cut out for them. And that's, you know, it has a nexus to health and hygiene. So we're making strides there, as well as, you know, secure points of entry, things like that are all part of what we do.
Awesome. Another question in here from Emily is, how are school employees trained to react in the event of an active shooter?
So I think we have our Washoe County School District emergency manager here, Roy Anderson, if we want to have him answer that directly.
Yeah, so I can answer that. There's multiple procedures in place that what we want to do is be able to remove, obviously, the individuals that are in danger away from those that are possibly causing harm. So we have a couple different steps that you've probably heard, a code red lockdown that we drill for, and that's one way that we help remove that. The other is you know, we do help, or we looked at ways where we could mitigate and hopefully prevent incident from occurring. So that would be like our threat assessment teams that, you know, we want to try to take a look at what the possible danger might be ahead of time, to where it is a multifaceted approach. And then once, you know, if an incident unfortunately does occur, then we have the response process in place where then we seek to have the protection from the incident, and then obviously the response from local entities that law enforcement that do practice and have procedures in place to respond to those incidents as well.
Thank you for that, Roy. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I don't see anybody's hands up.
I wanted to mention to everyone too that, you know, at any time, can reach out to us and reach out to the professionals in your building. Our district has a wealth of resources in many different departments that talk about all of these different components and help promote comprehensive school safety. And we would encourage you to speak to us. That happened in the 7 o'clock too. When he switches over and takes the PowerPoint off, it always confuses me, and I think we bounce back. But anyway, we would be happy to help you, to reach out to you, to talk with you about specific questions that you might not want to ask in an open forum, but you may want to ask personally. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware that this was definitely something that we would welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam and Katherine, for the great presentation.